My phone buzzed during Sunday lunch. Unknown number. The message says, "Don't react, they're recording you." I kept eating, kept smiling. But I looked around that dining room table and realized I was sitting in a trap. Someone at that table wanted me gone, but who, and why? That night I found them, cameras, hidden in my house, watching me for months. And when I discovered who planted them, my blood ran cold. They thought I'd be easy. A 68-year-old widow. Alone. Forgettable. They were wrong. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. The pot roast smelled perfect. Rachel only made pot roast when she wanted something. I stood on their front porch with a store-bought pie. The Sunday afternoon sun warm on my back. Before I could knock, the door opened. Rachel smiled at me. Her teeth were very white. "Margaret, come in, James is getting drinks." She took the pie without looking at it. "You didn't have to bring anything." But I always brought something. Every Sunday for 2 years, since Daniel died. The dining room table was set with the good plates, cloth napkins. Rachel had even put out flowers. I set my purse on the side table and noticed the vase sitting there. Tulips facing the dining chairs. Pretty, but the placement felt wrong. Like someone had moved it to point at the table. "Derek's joining us today," Rachel said from the kitchen. "He's looking forward to seeing you." Derek, her brother, the financial advisor. He'd been showing up at these dinners for months now, always asking questions about my house, my retirement accounts, whether I had my paperwork in order. James came in carrying a pitcher of iced tea. My son looked tired. Shadows under his eyes. He kissed my cheek without quite looking at me. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine, honey, same as last week." He nodded and poured the tea. His hands shook slightly. I watched the ice cubes tumble into each glass and wondered when my son had started being nervous around me. Tyler appeared from the hallway. 17, tall like his grandfather, Daniel's eyes. He hugged me properly. "Hey, Grandma." His voice was quiet. "You look nice." "Thank you, sweetheart. How's school?" "Good. Busy." He glanced toward the kitchen, then back at me. Something in his face I couldn't read. Ethan came running from the backyard, 9 years old and covered in grass stains. He crashed into my legs. "Grandma, I built a fort." "Did you? You'll have to show me after lunch." Rachel appeared and put her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Go wash up, honey, and change your shirt." The doorbell rang. Derek let himself in without waiting. He was 40, thick around the middle, expensive watch. He carried a bottle of wine like he was bringing communion. "Margaret." He kissed my cheek. His cologne was too strong. "You're looking well, staying active." "I walk every day." "Good, good. Exercise is so important at your age." He sat down at the head of the table. Not James's usual spot. James didn't say anything. We sat. Rachel brought out the pot roast on a platter. Everyone commented on how good it looked. Derek poured wine. I took half a glass to be polite. "So Margaret," Derek said, cutting his meat. "Rachel mentioned you're still in that big house by yourself. 4 bedrooms, right?" "3. It's not that big. Still, a lot of upkeep for one person." He smiled. "Have you thought about downsizing? The market's very strong right now." "I like my house." "Of course you do. I'm just saying from a financial planning perspective you could free up a lot of equity. Make your retirement more comfortable." I had $380,000 in retirement accounts and no mortgage. My retirement was already comfortable. I took a bite of pot roast and didn't answer. Rachel jumped in. "We just worry about you, Margaret. All that yard work, the stairs, being alone if something happens." "I'm 68, not 90. "I know, but things can change fast at this stage of life. We want to make sure you have support systems in place." She looked at James. "Don't we?" James nodded. He was looking at his plate. Derek leaned forward. "Have you designated a power of attorney? Someone to handle your affairs if you're unable to?" "I have a will." "That's good, but a POA is different. It's for while you're still alive. If you have a medical emergency or if your memory starts to go, someone needs legal authority to step in. Usually it's a family member." He looked at James, "A son, for example." My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. "I'm not planning on my memory going anywhere," I said. Rachel laughed. Too loud. Of course not, but these things sneak up on people. My friend's mother thought she was fine, and then one day she left the stove on and nearly burned the house down. I never left the stove on. I was meticulous about the stove. My phone buzzed again. Margaret, do you need to get that? Rachel asked. It might be important. It's fine? Tyler was watching me. His face was very still. My phone buzzed a third time. I reached into my purse and glanced at the screen under the table. Unknown number. The message was short. Don't react. They're recording you. We'll explain later. The letter T at the end. I kept chewing, swallowed, took a sip of water, put the phone back without changing my expression. Tyler. It had to be Tyler. I started noticing things then. The decorative clock on the mantel, its face pointed directly at the dining table. I'd been here 100 times and that clock usually faced the other way. The tissue box on the side table near the doorway, angled wrong, a small dark spot on the front that could have been a lens. The air freshener plugged into the wall outlet, too new, too shiny, positioned at eye level. Cameras. They were recording me. Derek was still talking about estate planning. Rachel mentioned assisted living communities again. Very nice ones. She'd done research, just to have options for when I was ready. I nodded and smiled and kept eating. Inside, my mind was spinning. If Tyler had sent that text, he knew about the cameras, which meant this had been planned. For how long? I thought about the last few months. Derek showing up more often, Rachel's questions about my daily routine. Had I had my checkup? Was I taking my medications? How was I sleeping? They were building something, a case maybe, against me. After dessert, Rachel walked me to the door. She hugged me and said we should do this again soon. Maybe Tuesday for coffee. I have ESL class on Tuesday, I said. Wednesday then? Book club. Her smile tightened. Well, whenever you have time. I walked to my car. The afternoon sun was low now, golden light across the lawn. Ethan was back in his fort, waving. I waved back. When I opened my purse to find my keys, I noticed my reading glasses were in the wrong pocket. I always kept them in the outside zip pouch. Always. Underneath them was a folded piece of notebook paper. I looked up. Tyler was standing in the doorway. He lifted his hand, not a wave, more like a signal. Then he was gone and the door was closed. I unfolded the paper in my lap. Teenage handwriting in pencil. Grandma, they have cameras in your house, recording you for months. Mom's brother helping. They want your house and money. I put a flash drive in your glove compartment last week when I borrowed your car. Everything's on it. I'm so sorry. Please be careful. Delete this, Tyler. I read it 3 times. My house. Months. They'd been in my house. Tyler had borrowed my car last week. Said his was in the shop. I opened the glove compartment with shaking hands. The flash drive was small and blue with his initials written in marker. I sat there in their driveway, engine off, staring at it. My own son, my daughter-in-law, her brother. They'd been in my house, in my private spaces, recording me. Rachel appeared in the front window, watching me. She raised her hand and smiled. I smiled back, started the car, waved. Drove home slowly, speed limit, turn signals, everything correct. My hands didn't shake until I pulled into my own driveway. That night I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and the flash drive Tyler had hidden for me. The house was dark except for the light over the sink. I'd closed all the curtains and locked both doors. I plugged it in. One folder labeled Grandma Evidence. Inside were dozens of files. The first video showed me in my bedroom getting dressed. The angle was from above, slightly to the left. My smoke detector. They'd put a camera in my smoke detector. I closed that file and opened another. Me in the kitchen making coffee, morning light through the window, wearing my blue robe. The date stamp said 3 weeks ago. Another file showed me in the bathroom brushing my teeth. They'd been watching me in my most private moments for months. I stood up and walked to the sink, poured a glass of water and drank it standing there, looking at my reflection in the dark window. Then I sat back down and kept going through the files. Screenshots of text messages between Rachel and Derek. Rachel had written that they needed more footage of me looking confused and asked if he could edit that conversation to remove the context. Derek replied that he'd already done it and had me looking like I couldn't track a basic conversation. Another exchange. James asking how soon they could file. Derek saying 2 more weeks of footage, and they'd have enough for an emergency petition. James asking about the house sale. Derek answering that the developer was ready and once James had power of attorney they could close fast. I read every message, let the rage build slowly and carefully. There were photos of camera equipment, receipts from an online spy store, instruction manuals. Then I found the document. A timeline for their plan laid out in 5 phases. Phase 1 was installing cameras and documenting concerning behaviors over 3 months. Phase 2 was creating edited footage showing confusion and inability to care for myself. Phase 3 involved Derek providing a professional assessment of diminished capacity. Phase 4 was filing the emergency power of attorney petition. Phase 5 was selling my house quickly, moving me to an economy facility and keeping the difference. They were currently in Phase 2, month 5. The document also mentioned the trust fund I'd set up for Ethan. $120,000 for his education. As his guardians, with me declared incompetent, they could petition to redirect those payments to themselves. $1.35 million total. That's what I was worth to them. The house at $850,000, my retirement accounts at $380,000, and Ethan's trust at $120,000. I sat there until the numbers on the screen blurred. Then I closed the laptop. It was past midnight, but my mind was sharp and cold. I walked through my house room by room, turning on every light. At dawn I started searching. The hallway smoke detector came down first. I stood on a chair and unscrewed the cover. The camera was smaller than my thumbnail, nestled next to the battery. I left it there and put the cover back on. The bathroom took longer. I checked the ceiling vent, ran my fingers along the edges until I felt the bump. Another camera exactly where I'd suspected. In my bedroom I looked at everything differently. The lamp on my nightstand had a small hole in the base I'd never noticed before. I unscrewed the bottom and found it. The kitchen hurt the most. Daniel had bought me that ceramic rooster for our 30th anniversary. Red and cheerful, it sat on top of the refrigerator. I lifted it down carefully. The camera was hidden in the comb on its head. 4 cameras total. I thought about every private moment in the past months. Getting dressed, showering, the night I'd cried looking at Daniel's photo. The morning I'd talked to myself while making breakfast. Working through a problem with a student from my ESL class. All of it recorded, all of it ready to be cut and edited and used against me. I wanted to rip the cameras out and smash them. Instead, I put everything back exactly as it was. I'd spent 40 years teaching Hamlet to high school students. I knew the line about the play being the thing wherein we catch the conscience of the king. If they were watching me, I'd give them a performance. A woman completely capable and sound. Every action deliberate. Every moment proof that I didn't need anyone's help. Tuesday morning, I taught my ESL class at the library like always. Smiled at my students, went over verb conjugations, praised their progress. That afternoon, I used the library computer to create a new email account. One they didn't know about. I sent a message to Tyler at his school email address. Thank you for the note. Can we talk somewhere private? He responded within an hour. Coffee Bean on Maple Street, Wednesday at 4. I'll tell Mom I have study group. Wednesday arrived. I got there early and sat in the back corner where we could see anyone coming in. Tyler showed up exactly at 4, looking exhausted and guilty. We ordered coffee and he slid into the seat across from me. His hands were shaking. Grandma, I'm so sorry, I should have told you sooner. You told me when it mattered. That's what counts. He looked at his cup. I found the camera equipment in Dad's closet 4 months ago. He said it was a security system for your house to keep you safe. I didn't think anything of it until 2 months ago when I heard Mom and Uncle Derek in the office. The door was cracked and they were talking about editing footage to make you look confused. I reached across and squeezed his hand. Tell me everything. So he did. How he'd started listening more carefully after that. How he'd heard them planning to file for power of attorney. How Derek had bragged about doing this same thing to his wife's grandmother 2 years ago and getting away with it. How Tyler had waited for weeks scared and not knowing what to do until finally he'd started secretly downloading files from his father's computer when they were asleep. How he'd collected everything on that flash drive and carried it around for weeks waiting for the right moment to slip it into my car. Uncle Derek did this before? I asked. Tyler nodded, to his ex-wife's grandmother. That's where he got the whole idea. He sold her house and put her in some cheap place and kept most of the money. By the time anyone realized what happened, it was too late. I went very still. What was her name? I don't know, but I heard him tell Mom it worked perfectly the first time. We sat there for a long moment. The coffee shop was busy around us, people laughing and talking, normal afternoon sounds. Everything felt far away. Tyler, I said, I need you to do something for me. Keep acting normal at home. Don't let them know you told me anything. Can you do that? What are you going to do? I'm going to stop them, but I need time and I need you safe. He looked at me with Daniel's eyes. I'm 18 in 2 months. Once I'm legally an adult, they can't control what I say. I know, but until then, be careful. He nodded. We finished our coffee and he left first. I waited 10 minutes before walking to my car. The afternoon sun was bright and warm. I drove home thinking about everything Tyler had told me. Derek had done this before. There was another victim out there somewhere. Another family destroyed by this same scheme. When I pulled into my driveway, I looked at my house like I was seeing it for the first time. Pretty brick, white trim, flower boxes I'd planted in spring. Worth $850,000 in today's market. Inside were 4 cameras watching my every move. But now I knew exactly where they were, and I knew exactly what James and Rachel and Derek were planning. I unlocked my front door and stepped inside. The house smelled like the lavender candle I'd burned that morning. Everything looked normal and peaceful. I stood there in my hallway and thought about what came next. They wanted to take everything from me. My home, my money, my independence, my dignity. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I'd taught teenagers for 40 years. I knew how to handle people who underestimated me. And I was about to teach my son a lesson he'd never forget. Patricia Vance had handled Daniel's estate 2 years ago. Her office was downtown in an old building with high ceilings and wood floors that creaked. She was in her late 50s with silver hair and eyes that didn't miss anything. I brought the flash drive and my laptop, set them on her desk without saying anything. Margaret, good to see you. What's this about? I need you to watch something. She plugged in the flash drive and I walked her through it. The videos of me in my bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen. The text messages between Rachel and Derek. The timeline document with their 5-phase plan. The property sale agreement already signed. Patricia's face got harder with each file. When we finished, she sat back in her chair. Margaret, this is criminal. Elder abuse, illegal surveillance, conspiracy to commit fraud. Your son is going to prison. My throat was tight but my voice stayed level. Tell me what we do. She called in a forensic tech expert and a private investigator. We spent 2 hours going through everything. The tech confirmed the videos had been edited and could prove it. The investigator took notes about Derek's history. Tyler mentioned Derek did this before, I said, to his ex-wife's grandmother. The investigator looked up. Name? I don't know, but it was about 2 years ago. I'll find her. Patricia laid out the strategy. Document everything. Keep a video diary showing I was competent. Let them keep thinking their plan was working. Meanwhile, build an airtight case. How long? I asked. A few weeks, maybe a month. We need to find this other victim and get her testimony. We need to prove Derek has a pattern. I drove home with my hands steady on the wheel. The next Sunday I went back to James and Rachel's house for dinner like nothing had changed. 3 days later, the investigator called. He'd found her. Linda Portman, 76 years old, living in a memory care facility on the east side of town. Derek's ex-wife's grandmother. He'd sold her house 2 years ago and moved her into the cheapest place he could find. Patricia and I visited her on a Thursday afternoon. The facility smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked vegetables. Linda was in the common room doing a puzzle. She had good days and bad days. Today was a good day. We sat with her at a corner table. I explained who I was and why we'd come. Linda's hands shook when she reached for her water glass. He did it to you too? He's trying, but I found out before he could finish. She told us the whole story. How Derek had convinced her to give him power of attorney just in case. How within 6 months he'd sold her house and moved her here. How by the time she realized what happened the money was gone. How her granddaughter had divorced him but the legal case went nowhere because Linda had signed the papers voluntarily. I was stupid, she said. You trusted family, that's not stupid. Linda gripped my hand. Don't let him do it to you, I lost everything. Patricia took detailed notes and had Linda sign an affidavit. On the way out, I looked back. Linda was sitting at that table alone, staring at her puzzle. That could have been me in a few months. The next 3 weeks I lived 2 lives. At home I performed for the cameras. Cooked meals, paid bills at the kitchen table where they could see. Did crossword puzzles, talked on the phone with my sister about current events. Every action deliberate proof that I was fine. On Sundays I went to their house for dinner. Smiled at Derek's questions. Listened to Rachel's suggestions about assisted living. Watched James avoid my eyes. But I was also meeting with Patricia twice a week. The tech expert was analyzing every video. The investigator was digging into Derek's finances and finding irregularities. Patricia was preparing motions and filing strategies. Then came the Sunday Rachel invited me over for their anniversary dinner. She said it would be just family. Maybe I could watch Ethan while they went out. I said yes. That Sunday I arrived at 5 with a bottle of wine. Rachel hugged me and said they had reservations at 7. Tyler was at a friend's house working on a school project. Just me and Ethan. James kissed my cheek. He smelled like aftershave and guilt. They left at 6:30. Ethan and I watched a movie in the living room. He fell asleep halfway through, curled against my side. I waited until his breathing was deep and steady. Then I moved him to the couch, covered him with a blanket and walked to James's office. The door was unlocked. His computer was on. I knew his password. He'd been using the same one since high school. Broncos 94. I typed it in and the screen came alive. I found the folder in less than a minute. Mom documentation. Inside were 40 videos, all edited. All designed to make me look confused, forgetful, unable to care for myself. I opened one. Footage of me searching kitchen drawers, looking disoriented, leaving the stove on. I remembered that morning. I'd been looking for my tea strainer, found it in 30 seconds, made tea, turned the burner off. The edited version cut out me finding the strainer, looped the drawer opening to make it look repetitive, ended before I turned off the stove. It was convincing. I looked exactly like someone with dementia. There were more files. A draft legal petition for emergency guardianship and conservatorship. A medical assessment form filled out by Derek with completely fabricated observations. Email chains between all 3 of them discussing timing and strategy. And the property sale agreement. Conditional on James obtaining legal authority. $825,000. Below market value for a fast cash close. I heard Ethan stir in the living room. I pulled out the flash drive Patricia had given me and copied everything. It took 4 minutes. I deleted the transfer history, closed everything, left it exactly as I'd found it. Ethan was still asleep when I came back. I sat next to him and smoothed his hair back from his forehead. They were using this child to justify robbing me. When James and Rachel came home at 9, I was reading on the couch with Ethan's head in my lap. "How was he?" Rachel asked. "Perfect. We watched a movie and he fell asleep." "Did he eat?" "I made him a sandwich around 7. Rachel smiled her white smile. James looked at his shoes. I drove home and sat in my driveway for a long time before going inside. The next morning I met Patricia at her office. I handed her the flash drive. She went through the files with the same hard expression she'd had the first time. When she finished, she looked at me. "This is everything we need. We filed tomorrow. All of it. Criminal complaint for elder abuse and illegal surveillance. Emergency restraining order. Cease and desist to the developer. Report to the state licensing board about Derek. Everything at once so they can't coordinate a response. What happens then? Then we see what they're really made of." Patricia filed everything Monday morning. By noon the sheriff had served restraining orders on James, Rachel and Derek. By 3 my phone was ringing. I didn't answer. At 5 Rachel showed up at my door. I watched her through the window. She was screaming something I couldn't hear. I picked up my phone and called the police. "There's someone violating a restraining order at my house." The officer arrived in 10 minutes. He warned Rachel but didn't arrest her. First violation. She left but not before looking straight at my front window. She knew I was watching. She smiled and waved. I closed the curtain and locked the door. Then I walked through my house and took down every camera. The smoke detector in the hallway. The one in the bathroom vent. The bedroom lamp. The ceramic rooster Daniel had given me for our anniversary. I lined them all up on my kitchen table and looked at them, 4 tiny cameras that had watched me for months. I'd left them there while I built my case. Now I didn't need them anymore. I put them in a plastic bag and brought them to Patricia's office the next morning for evidence. When I got home, my house felt different. Lighter, like I could breathe again. They'd wanted to take my house, my money, my independence. Instead, they just handed me everything I needed to stop them. I thought about Linda Portman doing puzzles alone in that facility, about Tyler carrying that flash drive for weeks, scared and not knowing what to do, about Ethan being taught to see his grandmother as a problem. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't scared. I was ready for whatever came next. The locksmith came on Tuesday morning. A young man with a toolbox and a clipboard. He changed every lock on my doors front and back. Installed deadbolts. Gave me new keys on a ring with a red tag. "You're all set, ma'am, no one's getting in unless you let them." I walked through the house after he left. Tested each lock. The clicks sounded different now. Solid, final. The security company came that afternoon. 2 technicians who installed cameras at every entrance, motion sensors on the windows, a control panel by the front door. Real security this time, mine. "Everything feeds to your phone," one of them explained. "You'll get alerts if anyone comes within 10 feet of your property." I downloaded the app and watched the live feed. My front porch, my back door, my driveway, all visible from wherever I was. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. But James and Rachel weren't done. By Thursday my phone was full of messages from friends. "Are you okay? James posted that you're refusing help." Someone saw Rachel's Facebook post about me keeping them from their own mother. "Heartbroken," she'd written. "Watching someone you love decline and being powerless to help." I called my sister first. Then my book club friends. Then the women from my ESL class, told each of them the truth. Showed them the restraining order if they asked. Most believed me. A few stayed quiet. One said maybe I was overreacting. I stopped answering calls I didn't recognize. Friday morning I walked out to get the newspaper and stopped on my front porch. My car was covered in scratches. Deep gouges running the length of all 4 sides. Words carved into the paint. Senile. Unfit. Danger. The garage door had been spray-painted white. Crazy old woman in letters 2 feet tall. My hands went cold. I looked up and down the street. No one, just the early morning quiet and birds singing like nothing was wrong. I pulled out my phone and checked the security app. Rewound the footage to 2:47 that morning. There was Rachel in dark clothes with a can of spray paint in one hand and keys in the other. She looked directly at the camera before she started. Like she wanted me to see. I called the police. The officer who came was young with a serious face. He took photos, wrote down everything, watched the security footage on my phone. "That's pretty clear evidence. We'll pick her up this morning. She violated the restraining order." "Yes, ma'am, she'll be arrested." He was right. By noon Rachel was in custody. James posted bail by evening, but she had criminal charges now. Vandalism, harassment, violating a restraining order. James posted about that too. "My wife was arrested today for trying to check on my mother. This has gone too far." I stopped looking at social media. The following Tuesday I got a call from Ethan's school. The principal, Mrs. Davies. I'd known her for years from when I taught in the district. "Margaret, I wanted you to know someone filed a report with Child Protective Services. They claimed you showed up at the school erratically. Tried to take Ethan without permission, showed signs of dementia." My stomach dropped. "I haven't been to the school in 2 weeks. I know I told CPS that. We have no record of you being here at all. But I wanted you aware someone's trying to build a case. Thank you for calling. Margaret, for what it's worth, I don't believe a word of it. But be careful." The CPS investigator called that afternoon. A woman with a tired voice who asked where I was last Thursday at 2 in the afternoon. "Teaching my ESL class at the library. I can give you the names of 12 students and the librarian who was there." She took the information, called me back an hour later. "Your alibi checks out. We're closing this as a malicious false report. I'm sorry someone wasted your time. They're trying to make me look unstable." I gathered that. It's noted in the file. But the damage was done. Someone at the school had heard. Someone told someone else. By Wednesday the rumor was all over town that CPS had investigated me. I held my head up and kept going to the library, the grocery store, book club, smiled at people who whispered, ignored the ones who looked away. Then Derek lost his license. Patricia called to tell me. The state board had acted fast, investigated his involvement in the surveillance, his falsified medical assessment, his pattern with Linda Portman. His license was suspended pending criminal charges. He lost his job too, Patricia said. The investment firm fired him for ethics violations. Good. Margaret, they're going to get desperate now, be careful. She was right. The next Sunday James called. I let it go to voicemail. He said they needed to talk. Said I was tearing the family apart. Said Ethan was asking why he couldn't see his grandmother anymore. I didn't call back. 2 weeks later, Tyler showed up at my door. It was a Saturday morning and he looked different. Older somehow. I turned 18 yesterday, he said. I hugged him on the porch. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Can I come in? We sat at my kitchen table. I made coffee and he wrapped his hands around the mug like he was cold. I'm moving out, staying with my friend Jake until I finish the semester. Then I'm going to community college. Your parents know? They tried to stop me, said they'd cut off access to the college account. He looked up. I told them you'd helped set it up years ago and they couldn't touch it without my signature. What did they say? Dad threatened to throw me out. So I left. His voice cracked. Grandma, I need to give a statement, a real one, for the court. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. They're my parents, and they did this. I watched them plan it and I didn't stop them fast enough. You warned me, that's what matters. It's not enough, I want to testify. Patricia met us at her office Monday morning. Tyler sat in the same chair I'd sat in months ago, and told her everything. She recorded it, took notes, had him sign an affidavit. This is powerful, she said when we finished. Their own son with no reason to lie, providing detailed testimony about the conspiracy. Tyler's hands shook when he signed his name. We stopped for lunch after, a diner downtown where no one we knew would see us. Tyler ordered a burger and didn't eat it. Do you think they'll go to prison? I don't know, maybe. Mom keeps calling. I'm not answering. That's smart. Ethan asked why I left. I didn't know what to tell him. I reached across and squeezed his hand. You tell him the truth when he's old enough to understand. For now you take care of yourself. He nodded. We sat there in the diner booth while the lunch crowd buzzed around us and I thought about how much courage it takes to stand against your own family. That week I got an invitation in the mail. James's company was holding their annual Family and Community Values Charity Dinner. He was receiving an award for 15 years of service. The invitation was dated from 6 months ago before any of this started. I was listed as a guest. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at that invitation for a long time. Then I called Patricia. The charity dinner is in 3 weeks. I'm going. Margaret, are you sure that's wise? He's going to give a speech about family values, about caring for aging parents, about being a devoted son. And everyone's going to hear the truth. Patricia was quiet for a moment. What do you need? Help preparing a video. Everything we have. The surveillance footage, the edited videos compared to the originals, the text messages, the property sale agreement, Tyler's testimony, all of it. You want to show it at the dinner. In front of everyone he works with. Everyone who thinks he's this devoted family man. They could sue you. For what? Showing evidence that's already filed with the court? Telling the truth? She laughed then, short and sharp. I'll help you put it together. I spent the next 2 weeks working with Patricia and her tech expert. We built a presentation that showed everything. Side-by-side comparisons of the edited videos and the originals, with timestamps proving the manipulation. Screenshots of the text messages discussing the plan. The property sale agreement James had signed before he even had legal authority. Derek's falsified medical assessment next to my actual medical records. Linda Portman's testimony about Derek's previous scheme. Tyler's affidavit. The final clip was from my Ring doorbell camera. 3 months old, from before I knew what they were planning. James and Rachel standing on my front porch after I'd gone to bed. Their voices clear. James said once they got power of attorney they'd move fast, sell the house and put me somewhere cheap. Rachel asked what if I fought it. James said I was old and who would believe me over them, and a medical professional. We put it all on a flash drive. 8 minutes total. The tech expert looked at me when we finished. This is going to destroy them. I know. I confirmed my attendance at the dinner. One guest, myself. Rachel tried to have me uninvited, but the company said it was an open event, and I had a valid ticket. The night before the dinner, I laid out my best dress, the ones Daniel had given me for our 30th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror, 68 years old. Gray hair I'd stopped dyeing. Lines around my eyes from smiling and teaching and living. They'd thought I'd be easy to push aside, an old woman they could manipulate and rob. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. The hotel ballroom had chandeliers and white tablecloths and flowers on every table. 200 people in suits and cocktail dresses holding wine glasses and smiling. James's company knew how to throw a party. Tyler met me in the parking lot. He wore a jacket and tie, his hair combed back. Still looked like a kid playing dress up, but his eyes were steady. "You ready for this?" he asked. "Are you?" "I'm the one who should be asking you that." We walked in together. The flash drive was in my purse, small and heavy like a stone. James saw us across the room. His face went white. He said something to Rachel and she turned. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. I smiled and waved. We found seats at a table in the back. Tyler's hand was shaking when he reached for his water glass. "It's going to be okay," I said. "They're going to hate me. They're going to know the truth. That's different." The dinner was salmon and roasted vegetables. I ate half and pushed the rest around my plate. Tyler didn't touch his food. At 7:30 the awards ceremony started. The company president gave a speech about dedicated employees and community values, about people who made a difference. Then he called James to the stage. James walked up there like he owned the room, shook hands with the president, held up his plaque, smiled at the applause. "Thank you," he said into the microphone. "I'm honored to receive this award. 15 years with this company has been the greatest privilege of my career." He talked about teamwork, about dedication, about the importance of family. "My father passed away 2 years ago," he said. "It taught me the value of caring for the people we love, of making sure our aging parents are protected and supported, of being there when they need us most." Tyler made a sound next to me, small and hurt. James kept talking, about responsibility, about compassion, about doing the right thing even when it's hard. The room was quiet, people nodding, a few wiping their eyes. "Family is everything," James said, "and I'm grateful every day for the family I have." More applause. James stepped down. The president announced a short Q&A session for attendees to share thoughts or ask questions. I stood up. Tyler gripped my wrist. "Grandma, it's time." I walked to the microphone at the side of the room, the one set up for audience questions. My heels clicked on the wood floor. Every step felt like walking underwater. The president saw me and smiled. "Yes, we have a question." I took the microphone. My hands were steady. "I'm Margaret Keene, James's mother." My voice carried across the room. "I'd like to share something with everyone here, about the family values my son just spoke about." James stood up from his table. "Mom, this isn't the time." "I think it is." I turned to the AV technician standing by the screen. Young man with headphones around his neck. Patricia had already spoken with him that afternoon. "Could you play the video on this flash drive, please?" The technician looked at James, then at me, then at the flash drive I held out. "Ma'am, I was told you'd be showing a family tribute." "That's exactly what this is." He took the drive, plugged it in. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up. Title card, "A Mother's Love, the True Story of Family Values." The first clip was split screen. On the left, the edited video of me in my kitchen looking confused, searching drawers, leaving the stove on. On the right, the unedited version showing me find the tea strainer in 30 seconds, make tea, turn off the burner. Text appeared. Video manipulated to show false signs of dementia. Timestamp and date proving editing. Someone in the audience gasped. The next clip showed more split screens. Me apparently talking to myself in my bedroom versus the full version with me on Bluetooth earbuds talking to my sister. Me dropping things and looking disoriented versus the real footage showing I'd simply been looking for my reading glasses. Then came the screenshots. Text messages between Rachel and Derek about needing more footage to make me look unstable. About editing conversations to remove context. About building a case for emergency power of attorney. James tried to move toward the stage. 2 security guards stepped in front of him. The video showed the property sale agreement. $825,000. Signed by James 2 months ago. Conditional on obtaining legal authority he didn't have. Derek's falsified medical assessment appeared on screen. Next to it, my actual medical records from my doctor showing perfect cognitive function. The room was completely silent now. Linda Portman's face filled the screen. Patricia had recorded her testimony. She explained in her quiet voice how Derek had done the same thing to her. How he'd sold her house and kept the money. How he'd moved her to a cheap facility and disappeared. Then Tyler's affidavit. His signature at the bottom. His statement about finding the camera equipment, overhearing the conspiracy, watching his parents plan to rob his grandmother. People were standing now. Some recording on their phones, others just staring. The final clip played. My Ring doorbell footage from 3 months ago. James and Rachel on my porch after dark. James's voice clear through the speakers. Once we get power of attorney, we'll move fast. Sell the house and put her somewhere cheap. Rachel asking what if I fought it. James answering, she's old, who's going to believe her over us and a medical professional? The screen went black. I stood there in the silence holding the microphone. My son and his wife installed hidden cameras in my home. In my bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen. They recorded me for months without my knowledge. They edited that footage to make me appear incompetent so they could steal my house, my savings, and my grandson's education fund. $1.35 million total. My voice didn't shake. They've been charged with elder abuse, illegal surveillance, fraud, and conspiracy. This is all evidence in an ongoing criminal case. But I thought you should know, before you give my son any more awards for family values. I handed the microphone back to the technician and walked toward the exit. The room exploded. People talking over each other. James trying to push through the crowd. Rachel screaming something I couldn't hear. Tyler was waiting by the door. We walked out together into the cool night air. Behind us the chaos continued. Ahead was the parking lot, and my car and freedom. We didn't speak until we were on the highway. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen, Tyler said. It was the truth, that's all. They're going to say you ambushed them. Let them. We drove in silence for a while. I dropped Tyler at his friend's house and went home. The house was dark and quiet. I turned on the lights, made tea, sat at my kitchen table. My phone buzzed, text from Patricia. Videos already online, someone posted it. 20,000 views and climbing. I turned off my phone. The next morning Patricia called at 8. James had been suspended from his job pending investigation. The company was distancing themselves fast, issuing statements about not tolerating elder abuse or fraud. By noon the video had 500,000 views. Local news picked it up. They called asking for interviews. I said no to all of them. Tuesday afternoon I got a call from the court. Is emergency custody hearing scheduled for Friday? Based on the evidence presented and the criminal charges pending, the state was recommending temporary custody of Ethan be granted to me. The parents used the child as leverage in a financial exploitation scheme, the caseworker explained. That constitutes emotional abuse. We need to protect him. Friday I sat in a courtroom while a judge reviewed everything. James and Rachel were there with their lawyer. They didn't look at me. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes. She read through the file for 20 minutes while we all sat in silence. I've reviewed the evidence, she said finally. The surveillance footage, the edited videos, the conspiracy to defraud. I've read the affidavit from the grandson. I've seen the criminal charges filed against both parents and their co-conspirator. She looked at James and Rachel. You used your minor child as an emotional weapon while attempting to rob your mother. That alone is grounds for custody removal. But the scope of this conspiracy, the invasion of privacy, the deliberate manipulation of evidence. I've rarely seen anything this calculated. She turned to me. Mrs. Keene, temporary full custody is granted to you effective immediately. The parents will have supervised visitation 2 hours per week pending the outcome of the criminal trial. James stood up. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Mr. Keene. You're lucky I'm allowing any visitation at all. He sat. I walked out of that courtroom with legal custody of Ethan and the weight of the past months lifting off my shoulders. Patricia was waiting in the hallway. You did it, she said. We did it. The criminal trials are set for next month. With everything we have, they'll probably take plea deals. And if they don't, then we go to trial and show a jury exactly who they are. I drove to Ethan's school. The principal met me in her office with release papers already prepared. She'd been notified by the court that morning. "I'm glad it's you," she said. "That boy deserves better than what he's been through." Ethan came out of his classroom with his backpack and a confused expression. "Grandma, what's happening?" "You're coming to stay with me for a while, sweetheart." "What about Mom and Dad?" "They have some things they need to work out. But you're safe. That's what matters." He took my hand and we walked out to the car together. That night I made his favorite dinner. Spaghetti with meatballs. We ate at the kitchen table and he told me about his day at school. About the science project he was working on. About his friend who could do a cartwheel. Normal things. Kid things. After dinner we watched a movie on the couch. He fell asleep halfway through, his head on my shoulder. I sat there looking at his sleeping face and thought about everything it had taken to get here. They'd tried to take everything. My home, my money, my freedom, my dignity. Instead they'd lost their son, their reputations, their careers, and now their child. And I was sitting in my house with my grandson safe beside me. 2 months passed quietly. Ethan settled into the spare bedroom with his posters and books and the collection of rocks he'd found in the backyard. He went to school, did his homework at the kitchen table, taught me how to play the video game Tyler had bought him. Normal things. I walked him to the bus stop every morning and picked him up every afternoon. We had dinner together, watched movies, read books. He asked about his parents sometimes and I told him they were dealing with some grown-up problems. He'd see them on Saturdays at the visitation center with a supervisor present. Tyler stopped by 3 times a week. He was doing well at community college, talking about becoming a teacher. The irony wasn't lost on me. The criminal trials were scheduled for the end of the month. Patricia said, "James, Rachel." My phone buzzed during Sunday lunch. Unknown number. The message says, "Don't react, they're recording you." I kept eating, kept smiling. But I looked around that dining room table and realized I was sitting in a trap. Someone at that table wanted me gone, but who, and why? That night I found them, cameras, hidden in my house, watching me for months. And when I discovered who planted them, my blood ran cold. They thought I'd be easy. A 68-year-old widow. Alone. Forgettable. They were wrong. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. The pot roast smelled perfect. Rachel only made pot roast when she wanted something. I stood on their front porch with a store-bought pie. The Sunday afternoon sun warm on my back. Before I could knock, the door opened. Rachel smiled at me. Her teeth were very white. "Margaret, come in, James is getting drinks." She took the pie without looking at it. "You didn't have to bring anything." But I always brought something. Every Sunday for 2 years, since Daniel died. The dining room table was set with the good plates, cloth napkins. Rachel had even put out flowers. I set my purse on the side table and noticed the vase sitting there. Tulips facing the dining chairs. Pretty, but the placement felt wrong. Like someone had moved it to point at the table. "Derek's joining us today," Rachel said from the kitchen. "He's looking forward to seeing you." Derek, her brother, the financial advisor. He'd been showing up at these dinners for months now, always asking questions about my house, my retirement accounts, whether I had my paperwork in order. James came in carrying a pitcher of iced tea. My son looked tired. Shadows under his eyes. He kissed my cheek without quite looking at me. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine, honey, same as last week." He nodded and poured the tea. His hands shook slightly. I watched the ice cubes tumble into each glass and wondered when my son had started being nervous around me. Tyler appeared from the hallway. 17, tall like his grandfather, Daniel's eyes. He hugged me properly. "Hey, Grandma." His voice was quiet. "You look nice." "Thank you, sweetheart. How's school?" "Good. Busy." He glanced toward the kitchen, then back at me. Something in his face I couldn't read. Ethan came running from the backyard, 9 years old and covered in grass stains. He crashed into my legs. "Grandma, I built a fort." "Did you? You'll have to show me after lunch." Rachel appeared and put her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Go wash up, honey, and change your shirt." The doorbell rang. Derek let himself in without waiting. He was 40, thick around the middle, expensive watch. He carried a bottle of wine like he was bringing communion. Margaret. He kissed my cheek. His cologne was too strong. You're looking well, staying active. I walk every day. Good, good. Exercise is so important at your age. He sat down at the head of the table. Not James's usual spot. James didn't say anything. We sat. Rachel brought out the pot roast on a platter. Everyone commented on how good it looked. Derek poured wine. I took half a glass to be polite. So Margaret, Derek said, cutting his meat. Rachel mentioned you're still in that big house by yourself. 4 bedrooms, right? 3. It's not that big. Still, a lot of upkeep for one person. He smiled. Have you thought about downsizing? The market's very strong right now. I like my house. Of course you do. I'm just saying from a financial planning perspective you could free up a lot of equity. Make your retirement more comfortable. I had $380,000 in retirement accounts and no mortgage. My retirement was already comfortable. I took a bite of pot roast and didn't answer. Rachel jumped in. We just worry about you, Margaret. All that yard work, the stairs, being alone if something happens. I'm 68, not 90. I know, but things can change fast at this stage of life. We want to make sure you have support systems in place. She looked at James. Don't we? James nodded. He was looking at his plate. Derek leaned forward. Have you designated a power of attorney? Someone to handle your affairs if you're unable to? I have a will. That's good, but a POA is different. It's for while you're still alive. If you have a medical emergency or if your memory starts to go, someone needs legal authority to step in. Usually it's a family member. He looked at James, a son for example. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. I'm not planning on my memory going anywhere, I said. Rachel laughed. Too loud. Of course not, but these things sneak up on people. My friend's mother thought she was fine and then one day she left the stove on and nearly burned the house down. I never left the stove on. I was meticulous about the stove. My phone buzzed again. Margaret, do you need to get that? Rachel asked. It might be important. It's fine? Tyler was watching me. His face was very still. My phone buzzed a third time. I reached into my purse and glanced at the screen under the table. Unknown number. The message was short. Don't react. They're recording you. We'll explain later. The letter T at the end. I kept chewing, swallowed, took a sip of water, put the phone back without changing my expression. Tyler. It had to be Tyler. I started noticing things then. The decorative clock on the mantel, its face pointed directly at the dining table. I'd been here 100 times and that clock usually faced the other way. The tissue box on the side table near the doorway, angled wrong, a small dark spot on the front that could have been a lens. The air freshener plugged into the wall outlet, too new, too shiny, positioned at eye level. Cameras. They were recording me. Derek was still talking about estate planning. Rachel mentioned assisted living communities again. Very nice ones. She'd done research, just to have options for when I was ready. I nodded and smiled and kept eating. Inside, my mind was spinning. If Tyler had sent that text, he knew about the cameras, which meant this had been planned. For how long? I thought about the last few months. Derek showing up more often, Rachel's questions about my daily routine. Had I had my checkup? Was I taking my medications? How was I sleeping? They were building something, a case maybe, against me. After dessert, Rachel walked me to the door. She hugged me and said we should do this again soon. Maybe Tuesday for coffee. I have ESL class on Tuesday, I said. Wednesday then? Book club. Her smile tightened. Well, whenever you have time. I walked to my car. The afternoon sun was low now.